From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning and welcome to MorningLine. I am Matthew Torres in for Nick Barris this morning. Today we are talking about a pretty important topic that's dominating national headlines, and for good reason. It is the impeachment inquiry on President Donald Trump and the ties to Ukraine. And to talk about that, we have Professor Thomas Schwartz with me today, someone that you have recognized for quite a bit when it comes to political science and history, for that matter. He's from Vanderbilt University, discussing really what happened yesterday. So if you did miss what happened, guess what? We have the man here to break it all down for us. Hopefully, I'm sure you will. Yeah. Among other topics, and really it was the first day. So if anyone has questions or answers or comments for that matter, we'll try to keep it civil. Okay. 615-737+. The number is right there on your screen, 615-737-7587. Don't hesitate to call. We'll be here for the next hour. So let's get right into it. Professor Schwartz, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me on the program.
Before we get into what happened yesterday, let's talk about how we even got here in the first place.
Okay. Well, back in July, the president had a phone conversation with the president of Ukraine. And during that conversation, he made some very explicit comments about an investigation that he wanted to see happen into the son of his major political rival, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden. And he also indicated he wanted an investigation into the possibility that people in the Ukraine had interfered with the 2016 election. At the time, the United States had promised military aid to Ukraine. It had been held up. And so the argument was that basically what the president was doing in this conversation was basically trying to get a quid pro quo, that the Ukrainian officials would investigate Biden and this issue of the 2016 election, in return for which the president would release the military aid that the Ukraine wanted in terms of dealing with the problems they have with Russia. A whistleblower alerted I'm struggling with the investigator that that went to Congress with this report because of a belief that this went over the line in terms of its in terms of what it what the president had done in effectively trying to help his own personal political interest on a national security issue. That was the famous transcript, which the president describes as his perfect conversation, but which then led to the decision by Nancy Pelosi to authorize an inquiry, and that has gone on from then.
And I know there are obviously a lot of supporters for President Trump, but the idea of, especially with what happened with the 2016 election, it's probably self-explanatory and common sense now, but just really hone in on why this is such a big deal and why this is it has implications on the president.
Well, I think it's a big deal because it does it seems to show that the president lacks the ability to discriminate between his own personal political interest, which was trying to bring down Joe Biden, and the national interest of the United States. And the diplomats who testified yesterday felt that this was a national interest question, the aid to the Ukraine in order to allow it to preserve its viability vis-a-vis Russia. That's a national security question, and there shouldn't be any bargain there that connects the president's personal political interest to the national security interest of the United States. And this is a problem with the President Trump's style, is that he frequently conflates his own personal interests, sometimes financial interests in terms of his Trump properties and the rest, with a larger national interest, and the Democrats are calling him on that and seeing this as an abuse of power.
As you mentioned, the diplomats, so we had Bill Taylor and George Kent testifying yesterday. I think the big one could be from really what Taylor said, as what a staff member heard in a conversation. Explain what happened there.
Well, what Taylor did is he was reporting on particularly this conversation that I already referenced, but then there was another one in which Gordon Sondland said that President Trump was more interested in the investigations than he was in anything else. And again, it highlights this idea that President Trump sees foreign policy as personal, more in his personal terms rather than the national terms, and this is why the Democrats feel this is an abuse of power.
What did you take away from their testimony? How did they seem to act? Where they stood? What did you leave with an impression of?
I had the impression of two capable, very obviously very well qualified civil servants who believe that politics should not, that domestic political or partisan advantage should not affect foreign policy, in particular on this issue, which they felt very strongly about. I think they in particular felt that the Ukraine should receive this military assistance in order to be able to sustain itself, and that they saw what the president was doing was very illegitimate, or as Ambassador Taylor put it, crazy, to hold up assistance like this over a partisan political issue.
And I think Democratic counsel Daniel Goldman even asked Taylor, in his words, in his decades in the service in the military as a public servant, has he ever seen an example of withholding any conditioned or personal or political interest of the president, in which he simply said, no, Mr. Goldman, I have not.
I think he was trying to make the case that although the United States often conditions aid on certain circumstances, either that human rights questions, behavior in other ways that the regime is engaging in, that Taylor had not seen in the past any president condition it on an investigation of a political rival.
And to bounce off from what you're saying, during their testimonies, they were very insistent as far as being the public, nonpartisan.
They were insistent they were
servant.
nonpartisan public servants. Yes, absolutely. And I have no reason to doubt that.
Yeah. Let's get to the lines now. I know we have some callers. Hey, Joe, thanks for calling. What's your question this morning?
Just a comment. These people that started this stuff, the one that started talking about it, and several other people, all members of Trump's party, and a lot of them work for Trump. So, they got the idea at the rights. But that being said, in your opinion, do you think there's anything that Donald Trump could do that people would finally understand that this guy is a loose cannon?
Well, I think even prior to this, a lot of people have already made the opinion of he's a loose cannon.
Well, and President Trump is famous for having said, I could shoot someone on Main Street or Fifth Avenue and not be affected by it. I do think this is, in a way, what he did in the Ukraine is very characteristic of his breaking the norms of Washington. He treating foreign policy in this way, treating other issues in a sort of casual way, changing his mind frequently, rotating and firing people. This is part of the Trump show. In that sense, I think this is something voters will have to probably face in November if they want to continue this or if they want something different.
And in a way, something that people almost slightly expected, or somewhat expected.
Yeah, no, I actually think this is par for the course. I don't think this is actually that different from other behaviors that we've seen in this president.
Perfect. All right, Professor Schwartz will be back with you after the break. If you have any questions or comments, again, the number is 615-737+. More of Morning Line coming up after the break.